From a distance, it looks like something out of science fiction, a flying saucer hovering over Slovakia's grandest river. But this isn't a movie set, it's a real structure built during the Cold War by a regime determined to reshape its capital city, even if that meant erasing part of its past. This bridge is completely unusual. A high-speed elevator climbs through its tilted lake, whisking visitors up to the top for fine dining, panoramic views, and a bathroom with 2 urinals providing the best view over the border with Austria. However, what has now become one of Central Europe's most prized landmarks was initially regarded as a total monstrosity. An eyesore that tarnished the reputation of a people with a far more regal background. Stay tuned to find out why, as today we discover Slovakia's UFO Bridge. I'm your host Ryan Sokash, and you're watching It's History. Let's go back to a time when Europe was broken in two. In the years following World War II, Bratislava was a city split in two, not just by the river but by ideology, infrastructure, and ambition. On one side, the historic Old Town, a maze of medieval streets and religious heritage, whereas on the other, a sleepy rural area was slated to become one of the largest socialist housing estates in Central Europe. But there was a problem. No bridge was strong, modern, or efficient enough to unite them. The existing crossings were aging and insufficient. They couldn't support the kind of mass development envisioned by the communist planners. If this new district was to rise, if the city was to grow into its socialist future, something radical had to be built. And so it was. In the late 1960s, a plan was drawn. The idea wasn't just to construct a bridge, it was to create a new architectural symbol, one that would reflect technological optimism, modern design, and the muscle of a new era. But ambition came at a cost. Over 100 buildings were demolished to make room for the roads feeding the bridge. Homes, a synagogue, a conservatory, and more. Whole blocks of the old town were sacrificed in the name of progress. In fact, the highway barely missed the Gothic entry to St. Martin's Cathedral, the former coronation site of Hungarian kings. But to better understand this story, I sat down with a local from Bratislava who lived in the city when the bridge was first constructed.
Especially during the communist era in the late 60s, a big suburb was planned to solve the problem of housing, because that was a problem that Bratislava had for decades of years. And communists, to become more popular, of course, they planned this big suburb to give nice modern apartments to as many people as possible. But before that housing estate could be built, they needed some connection between the two banks, because that bridge, that first permanent bridge, was definitely not sufficient, and moreover, that bridge was destroyed during the Second World War by the retreating Nazi armies, and then Soviet army restored the old bridge as a temporary one for 15 years, and it worked 65 years altogether. But definitely they could not rely on the only bridge. So it was necessary to build a new one.
And so it was. An architectural competition was announced, and Slovakia was destined for its UFO bridge. The bridge's design wasn't just about efficiency, it was about spectacle. The winning proposal was unlike anything else in Europe. A single pylon, cable-stayed span with a flying saucer on top. The designers envisioned it as a crown jewel of socialist modernism. The restaurant would hover 85 meters above the river, seating over 100 guests, who would ascend the tower by a high-speed elevator hidden inside of the eastern pylon. And I'd like to add a little emphasis. At a time when space travel captured global imagination, this futuristic form was no accident. It was meant to be astonishing, a literal symbol of reaching higher. Now that being said, it wasn't built for everyone. Dining at the top came with a high price tag meant for exclusive guests, diplomats, dignitaries, high-ranking party members, and so on. The people could admire it, but few would ever enter. Interestingly, the bridge was originally designed to include a public promenade with glass panels and shops linking both riverbanks. The idea was scrapped after the 1968 Soviet invasion, since military utility took precedence. Which raises the question, just how did the people in Bratislava feel about this?
When the bridge was completed, I was 14 years old. And to tell you the truth, I didn't care whether the bridge is, attractive or not. Simply, it was a new bridge. But what I've heard from my parents was that a very big part of the city and historical part of the city was destroyed. So for me, it was really controversial. I could not appreciate how beautiful it is and how audacious design it was for that period. But what I've heard from everybody around me was that 228 buildings were destroyed because the place for the bridge was not chosen by the architects, neither by the engineers. It was political decision. As before, shortly after the Second World War, when our only permanent bridge was destroyed, exactly here was a pontoon bridge built by the Soviet Army. Another reason why the bridge was not chosen better place, for example, a little bit further, was that the Iron Curtain started there. So in those times it was not possible to move it a bit further. And then also the Coronation Church, former Coronation Church of the Hungarian kings and queens, is so close to the highway that goes from the bridge that the church constantly suffers from vibrations. Yes. We have now 6 bridges in our city across the Danube River. But this one, built as the second one more than 52 years ago, this is still the most attractive bridge.
Time has a way of transforming perception. Some who once resented this bridge began to admire it. Others never forgot what was lost. But love it or not, the UFO embedded itself in the identity of Bratislava. In 2001, it was officially named Slovakia's Building of the Century. A structure once viewed as controversial had become a national icon. But from above, the real wonder isn't just what the bridge looks like, it's what's inside. We begin at the base of the bridge, where visitors enter through a modest ticketing area. No dramatic lobby, just a clean hallway and a plain stainless steel door. But don't be fooled by the simplicity. This is no ordinary lift. The elevator runs through the eastern leg, a sharply tilted shaft, yet the cab stays level throughout the 45-second ride, thanks to precision guide rails and a counterweight system. It moves at 3 meters per second and can carry 450 people an hour. It's one of the only elevators of its kind found in the entire world. At the top, you arrive in a sleek, circular dining area. This is Bratislava's highest restaurant. On a clear day, you can see nearly 100 kilometers in every direction. To the north, castle spires. To the south, endless blocks of communist housing. And beyond that, Austria.
First of all, we can see the river, the longest European Union river, because our city is situated on both banks. We can see on the left bank of the river the historical city center dominated by the St. Martin's Cathedral, the former Coronation Church of the Hungarian kings and queens. Then we can see the castle that dominates the whole city, but also the TV tower, which has shape of a wine bottle, because the mountains that we can see from here, not very high, those are Little Carpathians, and that's the prime wine region of Slovakia. To the left of the castle is what we unofficially call Beverly Hills of Bratislava, where mostly wealthy people of our city live. And then if we look this way, we can see former industrial zone, and that's where the newest skyscrapers of Bratislava are situated, our Bratislava downtown. And at the moment, that building, the closest one to the riverbank, is our real skyscraper. That's the highest building in the country at the moment.
So we're looking out towards Austria right now. Where does Austria actually start?
Austria starts right behind the forest, where you can see a silhouette of a hill. So that hill is Austrian, but the forest is ours, and it's a part of the former Iron Curtain.
So this zone right here would have been protected, patrolled by military. Today I see there's a bike path down there.
Yeah,
Was there a bike path then? Probably not.
Definitely not. You know, that was a path for the soldiers who were the only ones who could enter, and they were obliged to patrol. And you know, that was one of the advantages or good points of these, because when the communist regime collapsed, we had the bike path immediately built already.
Hey, wow. And then over here we have, this is the road that I think I drove in on today. And wow, with the clouds and everything, it really gets the vibe of the communist era as we would imagine it. So these are the houses that justified the bridge. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, this is the housing estate built in the communist era, which replaced almost completely a large village, and all this area was the recreational area for Bratislava. So it was something like recreational, let's say, playground in the city. And then the villagers lived here. They had their gardens. They improved their, living by selling the products at Bratislava markets. And nowadays, only a very little part of that original village still exists.
Okay. I also wanted to ask you about this skyscraper here, because I can't tell, is that abandoned or occupied? I was walking around down there.
That is a part of the exhibition area.
Okay.
And that's the office building, and the rest, those are the premises of the exhibitional area.
And here it
in
seems
Keba.
like you have a yacht club.
Actually, Bratislava was always a multinational and multilingual city, and each nation had their own church, their own sports club, and these were the sports clubs. So the place where we are, where the bridge is, there was the Hungarian sports club. The next building was the German sports club. And the next building with the blue doors, that was the Slovak sports club. Hungarians are not very lucky because their sports club does not exist.
Yeah.
German one still exists, but it doesn't work. And the Slovaks, in this case, were the most lucky ones because their rowing club still exists and works. And moreover, there is also a restaurant, Auschwitz.
Just around the corner is something you wouldn't expect. A bathroom with arguably the best view in Europe. From the urinal, you look out over an international border. Now, reportedly, the view from the women's room is just as striking, but I didn't check. There's also a hidden stairwell and evacuation route built into the western leg. Rarely opened, but accessible in emergencies. We were granted special permission to descend it, and I must admit, this space presented an incredible perspective on the downward spiral inside of the angled pylon. Now, if we turn upward, just one platform above the restaurant, exposed to the wind and sky, is a small observation deck where couples take selfies and YouTubers like me wrap things up. I will leave it there for today, but a special thanks to the UFO Bridge, Eva, and everyone who I met here in Bratislava. I know this might not exactly look like a typical advertisement for a vacation destination with the rain, but I'm telling you, it's fantastic. So come here and check it out for yourself. Otherwise, until next time, I'm Ryan Sokash, signing off.